When I was newly ordained, there was a story going around, and it was often told, and some of you may well remember it. It goes like this. A newly ordained woman was appointed to a parish where there was a male vicar and a male associate priest. The vicar and his associate were used to spending time together, about once a fortnight, to chat over parish matters and to do a bit of team building. It had been their practice to spend this time doing something they both enjoyed a lot and go fishing in a little boat that belonged to the vicar. They liked to fish while they talked. When the time came round for the next team outing, the two men thought they'd better invite the new curate to go with them. It would be mean not to. So the arrangement they worked out was that they'd sort the fishing gear and the boat, and she could bring a spot of lunch for them all. So the curate goes off to the supermarket to sort the food for the guys and for herself, and the men go to the marina to get the boat ready. They waited a bit, and she was a bit longer coming than they anticipated, and they were getting a bit impatient. They didn't like waiting about. So they decided to row out a little way, just to go out a bit, and to sort out the lines and to empty the water out of the bottom of the boat and do those things that chaps do when they go fishing. Meanwhile, the curate, who'd been held up at the supermarket by a parishioner who wanted to chat, arrived at the wharf. Well, the men caught sight of her out of the corner of their eyes, and while they kept their head down doing the lines and stuff, and they sort of whispered to each other, "Do you think we should go back and get her, or do you think we could pretend we haven't seen her?" Anyway, they decided in terms of future relationships, they better go back and pick her up. That would be the best option. So they lifted their head to wave at her and signal they're on their way back. But she'd already started out. Being independent, she'd begun to make her way towards the men, not wanting to keep them waiting any longer than necessary. When they saw her coming toward them, they looked at each other and they said, "Oh my God, she can't even swim." This old story reminds me very poignantly how often we miss the truly amazing because we expect to see or experience something else. The writer of Mark's Gospel, writing about 30 or 35 years after Jesus' death, at the time of increasing pressure and persecution on that small Christian community by the Roman emperor. The writer is concerned to set out Jesus' actions so as to convince hearers that this person, this Jesus, was an amazing person, was divine, was really someone special, and that his teaching was certainly worth following. I mean, after all, one only had to look at what he did. You didn't even need to just listen. You could look at what he was doing. The gospel writer was in the business of raising expectations amongst a new generation of people who had heard about Jesus, as well as maintaining commitment amongst those who had met him. Today's gospel reading is full of urgency, and it unashamedly is holding Jesus up as someone capable of changing the course of events, someone amazing. We hear that the disciples, as well as Jesus, have been so busy teaching and preaching and ministering in various ways around the countryside that they have not even got together for a while for that team building that they like to do. They haven't got together to share what's been going on or to sort of work out what ought to be happening next. In fact, they've been so busy that they haven't even had time to eat. Jesus was hoping for a bit of quiet time with his friends. But this wasn't to happen. The crowd, the story tells us, probably curious about what was going on, raced around the other side of the lake to see why these chaps were wandering off by themselves. After all, they'd been busy working amongst them, and now they were hiving off on their own. So off they go, and they get round the other side of the lake before them. And they stayed past dinner time, and they got very hungry. And then the reading goes on to tell us, Jesus was filled with compassion when he saw what they were up to and saw that they were hungry. And in response to their very basic need for food, he found a way of ensuring that they were fed. Then later still, and still in the need of a bit of quiet, he sent his disciples off home ahead of him in the boat. But the wind blew up, we're told, and they had difficulty navigating the waters. What I find really interesting in this story is that it points to how basic human needs are met. Spiritual needs, physical needs, and emotional needs. The need to find quiet time to think and to consider in the midst of much busyness is recognised and met. The need for food for the hungry is met. And the need for the emotional support of friendship when the going gets rough is met. Apart from Jesus making time for himself when there is so much urgent work to be doing, though, as an aside, in today's Western world, that might seem like a miracle in itself, the other two situations are often presented as miracles. Situations in which Jesus changes the natural course of events and the physical substance of matter by supernatural action, by adjustment in the cosmic scheme of things. He shifts that cosmic order, and in doing so, multiplies bread and walks on water. At the time of writing, this may well have been intentional. They're used to thinking in those terms. And it certainly would have achieved the goal of raising expectations around Jesus. We've got so used to hearing these miracle stories and others similar to them that we too have often been caught up with unreasonably raised expectations when we think about miracles. We want the bells and whistles, the shift in cosmic order, the supernatural intervention. And often, as we have matured in our faith, we found ourselves puzzled by such stories and felt either the need to rubbish them as impossible or to defend them hotly. Neither action, however, is necessary. Only to remember how stories about miracles worked at the time they were written down and what they were pointing toward. I think there is nothing in the stories we've heard this morning that should surprise us. Jesus, seeing that the people were hungry, were lacking food, a basic necessity, instructed the people to share what they had, and they did. With his disciples, he modelled that in good Mediterranean, hospitable ways. He saw his friends struggling to navigate the waters, and he moved alongside to give them support. Today, this feeding the hungry surely would be a miracle, a shift in the natural order of things. because today we would rather throw food away than give it away. We do that through dumping and through expiration dates. Today, food is not just a basic resource to satisfy hunger and keep people alive. It is a basic resource for monetary growth and profit. We cannot imagine just giving it to people. They have to buy it. How can we make a profit if they don't? We can hardly imagine just sharing it out. Our contemporary world does not work like that. Our global food supply chains are part of a complex capitalist economic system of supply and demand shaped to ensure profit margins. Consider Greece for a moment and what's been happening in the Eurozone. And I'd just like to note that John and I have just come home from some time in Crete and were privileged to experience the situation there firsthand. We were surprised that almost every day that we were there, in a little village of 700 people, and we were there for a month, we received gifts of food: eggs, honey, cheese, pastries, oil, greens, all from the little farms people had, and some of those farms were no bigger than a city section here in New Zealand. We experienced people with very little sharing what they had. A piece of the puzzle seems to be that Greece is working on a set of values and expectations that are different from the big players in the zone. Listening to President Tsipras speak about democracy as Greece interprets the concept, and about debt and development and basic rights for people, and you hear a story different from the one that positions capitalist investment, profit and growth as supreme values. It seems to me that the miracle in all the anger and confusion that surrounds the situation is that Greece, which knows it has a lot to sort out and is in no way perfect, and with its small, underdeveloped economy by the standards of Western capitalism, dared to challenge the big super economies of Germany, the Netherlands and others to a rethink about economics and about community. Greece challenged the members of the Eurozone, especially the bankers and economists, to remember what economics is all about: the gathering and distribution of the resources of the earth so people can live. Economics for the oikumene. And further, it urged them to remember that in communities of friends and neighbours with mutual concern for each other, there is health and strength, that there is nothing to be gained if one member of the community is driven out, shamed and belittled. I guess it depends on what you expect to see, whether or not you see a miracle in any of the chaos around the Greek catastrophe. We have become so used to expecting to see the work of Jesus with all the fanfare and the bells and the whistles of the miraculous, with the intervention of the supernatural in some way and the shift in the cosmic order, that we overlook the everyday miracles that we are invited to participate in without any fanfare. As today's gospel miracle stories point out, there is still something for us to hear, something that is important for our time. The importance of finding quiet time in the midst of busyness to reflect on who we are and on our faith. The urgency of meeting people's basic needs. The life-giving gift of supportive friendships. It seems to me that we might feel very encouraged in our faith and ministry if we take a little time out from the ordinary busyness of our lives and consider what we expect the work of Jesus to look like today. And to ask ourselves, do we expect ourselves to be engaged in activities that will lead to the hungry being fed? And to wonder, do we offer friendship and the life-giving and respectful support that goes with it? What do you expect of your faith commitment? I want to say that miracles are to be found in the ordinary, compassionate actions between human individuals and human communities that bring life and hope, and which restore people and nations to places of dignity and full responsible participation. And further, I want to say that we should expect to be engaged in miracles every day. Amen.